Also note that we are busy on Facebook, so whoever will have difficulties joining can always join us on Facebook.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining the November edition of the African Ombudsman Research Centre's webinar series. I'm very pleased that as a university, we are enabling the delivery of the mandate of the AORC to provide practical, regional, and tailored training to Ombudsman officers. To those joining us for the first time, my name is Brian MacArthur, Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor and Head of the College of Law and Management Studies here at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I once again have the very pleasant task of delivering the welcome address. I would like to start by acknowledging all board members of the African Ombudsman Research Centre, or AORC, executive committee members of the African Ombudsman and Mediators Association, AOMA. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to our esteemed panel, comprising CEO of the Office of the Ombudsman and Secretary General of AOMA in Kenya, Honorable Mercy Wambua, Ombudsman of the City of Cape Town here in South Africa, Honorable Vuzumzi Magwebu, who will also be facilitating the proceedings this morning, Commissioner of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice in Ghana, Honorable Joseph Whittle, Senior Manager for Legal Services in the Office of the Public Protector of South Africa, Advocate Niels van der Merwe, Victorian Ombudsman, Australia, Honorable Deborah Glass, who unfortunately cannot attend in person, but has provided a pre-recorded presentation. Greetings also to excellencies and honorable ombudsmen who are here, distinguished participants, guests, all colleagues, students, alumni, and members of the media. I welcome you to the AORC webinar session themed Dealing with Challenging Behaviour. As legal practitioners in the Office of the Ombudsman, I'm sure each and every one of you will be able to share anecdotes of their encounters with disgruntled complainants. It is the nature of the business. It is quite understandable, because your officers would not be approached if all officials behaved in accordance with the prescripts of the laws of our various jurisdictions. However, as we live in societies plagued with injustices, the Office of the Ombudsman is often confronted with challenging behaviour. Hence, the AORC has partnered with the International Ombudsman Institute, or IOI, to present today's webinar that will provide skills to deal with this challenge. Besides the areas that the esteemed panel will address, I would like to encourage you to access the IOI Best Practice Paper titled Dealing with Challenging Behaviour, issue 6 of April 2021, available on the IOI website. This is a very useful resource. I'm hopeful that today's webinar will contribute to the further development of skilled resources within the Ombudsman institutions and benefit each participating country and Africa as a whole. I once again welcome you to the November edition of the AORC webinar series in 2022. It is now my pleasure to hand over to the Honourable Mercy Wambua, who will now formally welcome you on behalf of AOMA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Brian. All protocols observed, and good morning to the facilitators and our participants. As indicated, my name is Mercy Wambua, the Commission Secretary and CEO of the Commission on Administrative Justice, also known as the Office of Ombudsman Kenya. Our chairperson, Honorable Florence Kajuju, serves as the Secretary General of AOMA, and we do offer secretariat support to AOMA generally from Kenya. I'd like to begin by expressing my utmost appreciation to the African Ombudsman Research Center, AORC, the International Ombudsman Institute, IOI, and the University of KwaZulu-Natal for this great partnership that makes this webinar and many others all year around possible. I also wish to appreciate our Secretariat for the great work they put in coming up with educative seminars, such as the one we are having today, under the theme of dealing with challenging behaviors. This is an important topic to deliberate on, given that Africa Ombudsman and Mediators Association has member institutions in Africa with varying mandates, some of which have broad mandates, including human rights, anti-corruption, environmental protection, administrative justice, as well as promotion of access to information as it is in Kenya. Difficult, challenging behaviors is a challenge that cuts across the globe, and this has led to development of various theories and models as experts try to come up with ways of handling it. We are privileged today, and I must appreciate all our facilitators for having accepted to be with us and prepared to give us and enlighten us on this sensitive yet very crucial topic. And I believe by the end of this session, we will all be better placed as far as dealing with challenging behaviors by or from our stakeholders who are mainly the complainant concerned. Such challenging behaviors cause serious strain on both financial and human resources in ombuds institutes, and sometimes expose institutions to possible risks of system breakdown. With the rising cases of mental health issues and stress across the globe, and particularly in the African continent, as a result of the aggravated COVID-19 pandemic, droughts, and challenges that come with it, high levels of unemployment, name all those challenges. People are generally unhappy, and that spills over and affects how they approach our offices as they seek reprieve for the many challenges they face while accessing public services. It will be interesting to learn from our speakers today on the various possible policies, practices, and systems that the Ombudsman institutions can put in place to be able to handle the increasing phenomenon of challenging behaviors and the possibility of leveraging on modern communication and technology to possibly deal with the challenging behaviors that we do experience while addressing the triggers to the challenging behaviors. I will conclude with a quote from the Dalai Lama, where he said, although you may not always be able to avoid difficult situations, you can modify the extent to which you can suffer by how you choose to respond to the situation. I look forward to the insightful engagements that we are about to have, and thank all of you for creating time to be part of this webinar. And I welcome you and look forward to fruitful engagement, as I've said, with our esteemed panelists. Thank you all, and God bless you. I will now hand it over to our first facilitator. We'll take over from there.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to say thank you to Professor MacArthur for really welcoming us. I just want to express a special appreciation to the UKZN and the AORC for really affording us this platform. To me, it is very important that we continuously come together under one roof and deal with the issues so that we can be able to share ideas and share information. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vusi Magweru. Call me Vusumzi or Vusi, the easiest way, V-U-S-I. I have a privilege to really facilitate the conversation this morning. I'm excited. I was saying to Frankie earlier, you know, I am on study leave, but I couldn't miss it for the world. I said, I'm going to come because I appreciate learning from other institutions across the Pacific, across the Indian Ocean, and across the Atlantic Ocean. So I am really excited. I just want to welcome those colleagues in various offices, parts of the world, who have come to join us as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the order of proceedings today is really as follows. We have 3 speakers. Each speaker has got 15 minutes. So what I will do really, I want to plead with the speakers to work with me and assist me and stick to the time frame, stick to the time allocated to the speaker. But I will assist the speaker. When there's 2 minutes left, I will indicate and really caution you to wrap up. Then I will introduce the second speaker. I will do the same and then introduce the third speaker and our final speaker of the day. After that, ladies and gentlemen, we will go to the Q&A session. Then after the Q&A session, once the speakers have dealt with the questions, I will then ask the speakers to really give us their final thoughts. So what I will suggest now to the colleagues who have joined, if you've got questions, be patient, but post your question in the inbox. Then we will be able, when all 3 speakers have delivered their keynote addresses, then we will deal with those questions. As we start, ladies and gentlemen, and as I was preparing for this meeting quickly this morning, there's something I thought, and I was asking myself, why are these sessions or these webinars important today? And why I am really grateful for them. And this is the answer I have found. I thought I would share it with you. These are the words from John Mbiti, who is the Kenyan philosopher. I think he currently lives in Switzerland. He's a theologian as well. And he expressed the following words, that at the center of African thought, there is a cardinal principle. And this is how he puts it, I quote, "Whatever happens to the individual happens to the whole group, and whatever happens to the whole group happens to the individual. The individual can only say, I am because we are. And since we are, therefore I am." So I approach these webinars in that spirit that we're coming to learn from one another, to share knowledge and debate ideas, because I am because we are. We are, therefore I am. So we are in that space, ladies and gentlemen, as global citizens, that we share the knowledge. As we prepare to start, the first speaker of the day I'll quickly introduce is Honorable Joseph Whittle from Ghana. Mr. Whittle is the Commissioner of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice and Chair of the Governing Council with supervisory oversight over all functions of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. He was appointed in December 2016. He joined the Commission in 1994 as Upper East Regional Director and was later appointed Director, Legal and Investigations at the head office between 2008 and 2012. He served as a Deputy Commissioner of Legal and Investigations He is currently the chairman of the working group of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions on the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development Goals and the African Agenda 2063. Mr. Whittle is also the vice chairman of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions. He is a doctoral candidate, the Doctor of Business Leadership of the prestigious Paris-based IPAD Business School, Nobel International Business School, and has been elected the bureau member of the Geneva-based Global Alliance of the National Human Rights Institutions, representing the network of African National Human Rights Institutions on the whole world. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our first speaker of the day. Mr. Whittle, thank you, sir. We're excited, we're looking forward. I now hand it over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Vusi. Because you said we should call you that for ease, I intend to stick to that. The Honorable Professor Brian McCarter, Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, who is also the head of the College of Law and Management Studies. Ms. Mercy Wambua, you are the CEO of the Office of the Ombudsman of Kenya and also the Secretary General of AOMA. Of course, the Honorable himself, Vusi, you are the Ombudsman of the city of Cape Town. And my colleagues, panelists, Advocate Niels van der Merwe, Senior Manager, Legal Services Office of the Public Protector, South Africa, and also Ms. Deborah Glass, who is the Victorian Ombudsman of Australia, but of course will be joining us through video. It's a pleasure indeed to be invited by AOMA and AORC to present the topic, what is challenging behavior, against the background of the team dealing with challenging behavior. I have a PowerPoint which I intend to share and then take my 15 minutes as much as I can out of that. Thank you. Do I have the hosting rights to share?
Yes, you have, sir. You do.
Perfect. Perfect. It appears I'm not getting my okay. Is it appearing now?
Your desktop is appearing, but not the presentation yet.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
There we go, Mr.
I hope it has come.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so my presentation outline will be as follows. What is not defined will not be understood. And so I will attempt to define challenging behavior in the context of the Ombudsman service delivery. And I will try to contrast the challenging behavior and unreasonable behavior within the context, again, of the Ombudsman and other complaint handling bodies. I will propose some few recommendations for policy guidance of the institutions. Now, what is challenging behavior? To start with, it's very important to appreciate that challenging behavior is behavior that a person finds challenging. It's not about the person who is the cause of the challenging behavior, but it's about the behavior of the person. That is very, very important. And that challenging behavior varies from person to person. So what is challenging behavior to Honorable Vusi will be different in terms of challenging behavior to me. Our thresholds will be different. And so it's important to appreciate challenging behavior from the perspective of what it is and how it varies from a person to person. Again, it's also important not to look at the person's behavior as unreasonable, because the best approach will be to adopt the perspective of the person experiencing the behavior. So once again, it's about complaint handlers. It's about the ombudsmen who also actually do complaint handling themselves, how we experience the behavior, which is very important. But it's important to also appreciate that it's not every challenging behavior which is unreasonable. Because what is challenging behavior can be managed and can be diffused. But what is unreasonable behavior is something that we should protect our staff and ourselves from. And so we will reflect on the types of behavior that can be said to be challenging in this context. One, if our ombudsman and our complaint handlers, in terms of the control their reaction to the behavior so they can respond effectively, then it means that they are facing a challenging behavior. They need to control their reaction. They also need to choose the best strategy for dealing with the behavior, which is very important. And they also have to look after themselves. It is always necessary for complaint handlers to understand themselves, because different people find different behaviors challenging. Some people might find it challenging to deal with a person who seems emotional. Some find it challenging to deal with a person who is coming from a different background. Also challenging is a situation of a person who speaks a different language and or has a disability. Other complaint handlers might find challenging behavior might find it challenging to respond to a person who ignores advice. Somebody walks into your office, you inform him this is not the time, we've closed, tomorrow is the next day, and the person ignores your advice. Actually, he actually goes on to question your competence and insists on seeing you or dealing with the head of the institution or the manager of the team. That can be very challenging. Some may be able to accommodate it, some may not. So we need to know the thresholds. So complaint handlers, therefore, need to understand what they personally find challenging if the complaint is to be handled well. Now, having discussed what are the potential areas of challenging behavior, let's look at what is unreasonable behavior, which we are required to protect our staff from. Challenging or unreasonable behavior are normally are seen to be the same certain times, but they're actually not the same. They are not the same, and the approaches to solving them should not be the same. Now, most challenging behavior can be dealt with through good complaint handling, and we can diffuse them through certain strategies. In our offices, somebody can walk in, and because of his behavior, his tantrums and others, some particular complaint handlers will not be able to handle that. But you take the person to another complaint handler, and automatically the person sobers up. He has a way of handling the person. So it's important that we appreciate the diffusing strategies which are available to handling challenging behavior. But on the other hand, unreasonable behavior, which is like a proxy of challenging behavior, means any behavior by a person, a member of the public, that because of its nature or frequency, it raises the following issues: health, safety, resource, or equity issues for an organization, its staff, and other service users. Now, the focus here is on the behavior rather than the member of the public who is demonstrating it. Again, unreasonable behavior can include examples: repeated contact by an individual after the institution has comprehensively considered and finalized a complaint or an inquiry they have made. You know the work we do. After an exhaustive investigation leading to a decision that has been rendered, somebody walks in and tells you, no, I think something else still needs to be done. That can be unreasonable. Now, persistent demands by an individual on how the institution should handle his complaints, or the priority it should be given, or the outcome that he thinks should be achieved by the complaint. That can be unreasonable behavior. Also, constant and repeated arguments by individuals that are not based on logic or argument. And I think the greater majority of you who handle complaints appreciate this type of situation. Arguing without logic and incomprehensibly, making false, inflammatory, or trivial arguments, or requesting you, the institution, to go outside your scope of your functions and your services. That is unreasonable behavior. Now, some can actually be very aggressive. Some can insult. Others will hurl verbal abuse. Some will threaten. Some will engage in derogatory comments. In fact, some will actually even do discriminatory or defamatory remarks. That is unreasonable behavior. Unreasonable behavior is not limited to telephone conversations. You have email chats, face interactions. It can occur over the internet, social media, public locations, or written correspondence. It can even include somebody who has since no longer become a party. The complaint is over, but he continues to badger the institution. Unreasonable behavior can occur once, but it can also occur several times or frequently. What is important is that it is a challenge that is raising substantial health, safety, resource, or equity issues for the institution. That is very, very important to appreciate. Indeed, there are quite a number of manuals around, and I was happy with Professor Brian McCarthy's indication of the IOI best practice paper, which has set out these 5 categories of unreasonable behavior: unreasonable persistence, unreasonable demands, unreasonable lack of cooperation, unreasonable arguments, and unreasonable behaviors. These are actually unreasonable behavior, and we need to do certain things about them. Now, Honorable Vusi, may I propose some recommendations for policy guidance for the Ombudsman institutions in Africa and maybe beyond?
Yes, Honorable Whittle, you can, but I'm afraid you have 2 minutes, but I'll give you 2.5.
I'm just
upset.
I'm wrapping up on this. Thank you so much. So ombuds institutions and other governmental complaint handling bodies will definitely, by the nature of our work, face challenging behavior. And therefore, there's a need to build the capacity of staff in terms of skills and strategies to identify, manage, and or diffuse such challenging behaviors. Those public ombuds institutions that have not done that, that have no capacity building strategies for dealing with challenging behavior, we need to look at that. On the other hand, staff of the ombuds institutions must also be protected from unreasonable behaviors from complainants, which pose health, safety, resource, and equity issues on the organization. And we can do that by the adoption of policies, manuals, guidance on dealing with challenging behavior and unreasonable behavior for complaint handling. I propose that AORC or IOI should come up with model guidance or policy for dealing with challenging behavior for all of us to follow. On that note, I thank you so much, and I look forward to questions and answers. Thank you. Handing you back to Vusi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Whittle. I think your speech really was very insightful. And I am really happy because my take really from what you have just delivered now to us is you are not only identifying the problem, but you are bouncing solutions or proposed recommendations. To me, that's really important. The issue of capacity of the ombuds staff to identify, manage, and deal with this challenging behavior, I think that's very important. And we know that we are dealing with the chronic challenge really of capacity because it takes money to really get into that space, but it remains a question that how do we do that? I'm happy that you are making a call to AORC to consider putting up trainings around these issues for our staff to empower them. Again, I'm happy you have also helped us to understand this morning that not every challenging behavior is unreasonable. I think to me that was very profound for us to take home today. And you've also helped us to and challenged us that every office should consider having a strategy in place to diffuse conflict or to diffuse the challenging behavior. That again, we are truly grateful and thank you for those insights, but we will still invite you to come back when the need arises in the next few minutes as we proceed. Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue to post those questions as they come, and we would address and attend to them as we conclude. Allow me to introduce our second speaker quickly. This man is not a stranger to me. I have met him before, and it's an awesome privilege to really introduce him again to this platform this morning. His name is Advocate Niels van der Merwe. He's a Senior Manager, Legal Services at the Office of the Public Protector currently. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Ombuds institutions, he has spent almost 26 years in the ombudsmanship and doing the investigations, and he commenced employment in 1997 as the senior investigator at the Office of the Public Protector. Advocate van der Merwe in 2010, he was appointed as manager in knowledge management and research. His main task really was to provide research support at various levels in the Office of the Public Protector, including concept papers, research support, and also notes for speaking engagements, research on legislation and submissions to Parliament, and international engagements of the Public Protector and Deputy Public Protector. Ladies and gentlemen, currently Niels is the Senior Manager Legal Services in the Office of the Public Protector since August 2022. He has contributed a lot on policy development, policy guidelines, and standard operational procedures in the Office of the Public Protector. Niels, meneer, it's good to see you again.
Yes, good morning.
I'm excited. I look forward really to your address to us. And without further ado, I hand over to you, sir. The platform is yours. You've got 15 minutes to take us through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable. Sorry, let me just get my timer on here. Yes, it's indeed an immense privilege to be sharing the platform with so many excellencies and colleagues from around the world on this very important topic. I also have a presentation that I want to share. I'm just going to skip some of the parts because of the fact that some of our colleagues have already dealt with it. Shall I put it on full slide? Slide view, or is this okay?
No, put on full slide. Yes, that will
okay.
help.
Let me just. Sorry.
Just press F5. It's going to pop up on the full screen.
Yes. Okay. Is that fine?
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Niels. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, because over the last 27 years, good morning again to all the excellencies, colleagues around the world, Prof. Vusi, and all protocols observed. Yes, during the course of 27 years at the Office of the Public Protector, we've had our fair share of behavior issues. When we started in 1995, we were not really faced and prepared for the kind of behavior that we would experience. And from myself, if I look at the amount of research and papers and policies that are available, they were not available at the time.
You're on mute. Okay, there you come again. Thank you.
And they were not available at the time when we started in the office, and we were dealing with matters in a way that comprehended the problem instead of alleviating it. I'm not going to. Sorry, it is a common problem. I'm not going to go through the whole slide. The biggest, as Honorable Whittle was saying, it does have an impact, and my approach and what I'm asking to do was to deal with it productively. Productively meaning looking at the impact of the behavior, the unreasonable conduct on how we use our resources and how we respond to that. And I'm not going to go through the definition of unreasonable conduct. Honorable Whittle has done a great task of alluding to that. What we are looking at is, first of all, what are the reasons? Why do people behave what we call unreasonably? And like the Honorable Whittle has said, the focus is on the behavior, because focus on a complainant or on the person. First of all, we are not health profession. professional. So we can't really look at personal issues. We can look at what are the norms and grounds for reasonable behavior, because once we start off with a complaint, everybody is free to lodge a complaint with an ombudsman office, but it doesn't come without limitations. We'll go into that in a moment. There's an implied duty of good faith, just like we expect the complainants to act in good faith when we act in good faith. There's an implied, because it's a relationship, it's not just a service that we are rendering. The kind of service that an ombudsman delivers is beyond just, because most of it is free of charge, and it's based on the duty of good faith, and we have certain principles and norms that we want to comply with. So some of the international experience has learned us that there's a wide range of reasons why complainants behave unreasonably. It's attitudes, they are dissatisfied with a person or an organization or the system or a process. It's emotions and psychologies, and I'm not meaning in the sense of medical terms. It's the fact that they're experiencing anger, frustration, and disappointment at a level which causes them to express those emotions in unacceptable ways. And we deal a lot with unreasonable and unacceptable. I come to that now. They've reached a point where the sense of entitlement has inflated, or they are unable to accept any personal responsibility for their issues. And it's important to understand this. And then aspirations, they're seeking satisfaction on a very personal level beyond the outcomes and redress that the complaints process and the ombudsman remedial action are designed to deliver. They're looking for justice, a moral outcome, or are obsessively pursuing their issue on a matter of principle. And I'm not saying it easy, but they're looking for something that the system cannot deliver, a vindication, retribution, and in some instances, redress. Their expectations, physical, financial, are sometimes not met. The impact of such conduct, because we are geared towards delivering a service, engaging and interacting with our complainants generally. But the difference is that the persons who are prone to unreasonable behavior or conduct pursue their issues for longer. They produce far greater volumes of material that might be relevant or irrelevant to support their case. They telephone, or these days WhatsApp, or they insist on having the personal details of the investigator, and they contact the office more frequently. They personally visit the office more frequently, mostly without appointments. They will continue to complain when the case was closed. They will often involve other agencies, and it's generally more difficult to deal with. The risk of this behavior is that staff members start to avoid the complainants, which they deem as difficult, which to contribute to a development of an organizational culture where these complainants are seen as irritant or not important. Their complaints are delegated to junior staff, or valid complaints might be neglected or even declined without sufficient consideration of the merits of the issue. A case in point was a complainant who came to us with several issues, and he used to sing in front, sitting in front of our reception area, and sing, "How many times does a man have to die before you can call him a man?" And there was a general perception that this is one of those difficult complainants, and we didn't focus. And one day when we consulted, he was telling me that he was actually a musician, and that a lot of artists copied and infringed on his copyright, and he was never compensated for that. And I took the chance and I referred it to the relevant authorities. And it was indeed correct that he had a valid complaint and that he was owed royalties for the music, and we managed to get those royalties. And that is because we focused on the conduct and not the person. Once you reject a person as a whole, you close your office, and accessibility is one of our paramount principles of any contact with an ombudsman office. So even though it is difficult to manage, we must look at the fact that these complainants do place additional demands on skill levels, time and resources, and can contribute to increased stress levels. But therefore, I like what Honourable Whittle was proposing to come up with a policy, because those are the things we can control, is our response, our skills, the time that we invest, and the limitations we put to ensure that we can productively manage the approaches by the office. We need to have a systemic approach, like the Ombudsman was saying, because there's no one size fits all. But looking at the best practices around the world, there are tremendous number of policies where we are sharing our experiences internationally. And we can adapt those to suit the circumstances of each case and to supplement it rather than replace. The public protector subscribed to a notion of a systemic and consistent approach to ensure equity and fairness through consistency in handling of all complaints, to improve efficiency in the use of resources, and to comply with occupational health and safety concerns by reducing the stress experienced by staff. Because preemption or prevention is one of the best strategies. And it's important to note, while a complainant is owning the issue, it is within the office and the Ombudsman office to respond to those issues. And it's important to, at the onset, manage and set clear expectations, communicate what's relevant to the complainant, let them know what the organization can do and not do, what they can expect, what the processes are, and the timelines and outcomes. Because people come to us as an office of last resort, where they have already gone through all the possible emotions related to a matter. And it's important that we manage the expectation. And we continue to test and manage the expectations throughout the process. Exercise ownership of the complaint. The complainant is both the trigger, but also the witness to the evidence, the producer of evidence in relation to a complaint. But it's important to note, while that is within his prerogative or her prerogative, the process, the complaint process, belongs to the Ombudsman office. And to clearly indicate this is how we are going to deal with it, and to avoid any dictation or prescription in relation to how that issue should be dealt with. To communicate professionally, respectfully, calm, professionally and impartially, and clearly communicate outcomes, to establish ground rules. It's important to, at the onset of the indication where a person will be frustrated, to not address the emotion and react in the same way, but to establish and clearly say to the complainant, in order to have a working relationship, these are the limitations that we expect. We cannot deal with a situation where we are abused and then expected to be delivering the kind of service that the person is expected. Avoid labeling complainants. As I said, it's so easy then to discard lawful and general complaints that might be within scope. Recognize early signs of anger, and then most importantly, keep good records of complaint interactions. We need to know that complainants are entitled to express opinions in a way that are reasonable, lawful, and appropriate, regardless of any cultural background, nature, origin, and they are entitled to a reasonable explanation of the outcome in the process, to an impartial and fair assessment, to a fair hearing, to a timely response, to be regularly informed and updated, to have decisions explained to him. Not all persistent conduct, for instance, is unreasonable. A person might just be anxious to know exactly. Yes, 2 minutes or 1 minute. 1 minute.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I'm just going to go because I think my next colleague will deal with I just wanted to include the issue of how we deal with the various unreasonable persistence. It's all about communications, and this is an example from existing policies. So we agree with the categories: unreasonable persistent, unreasonable demands, unreasonable frustrating investigation, unreasonable arguments. And I just want to use 2 seconds to say threatening and potentially abusive behavior. There is a burden on the employee to ensure the safety and the health and wellness of staff members. Then I want to summarize by saying that it's important to ensure that staff members' wealth and safety are considered, to have good protocols in place, ensure that staff have enough time, develop a supportive culture, and consider the subject of the complaint as well as the complaint handling staff members. It's inevitable, but robust policies, as the Honourable Whittle has said, will help to manage these objectively. And we need to be aware of vulnerable complainants as well, and the training of our support staff. Be a good listener and have a specific policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep those questions coming from the inbox. We'll appreciate that. You know, my take on this issue, really the challenging behavior, what Niels has raised, I think he came from a different angle altogether, and it's helping us. And I'm sure you will agree with me, ladies and gentlemen, because until we answer the why question, why the challenging behavior? And I think what stands out is the failure on our part, because we must take ownership and take stock. The failure on our part to manage expectations. I think that's very important. I mean, when people come to us, as Niels has correctly stated, they are battered and bruised. They have reasons to believe that the system has failed them. So we need to be a very responsive office, and we need to manage those expectations. I always say to my team in the office, it really, really, really frustrates me. And I find it unacceptable that a matter that after 6 months of receiving a complaint, we write to the complainant and say, sorry, after careful consideration, looking at our mandate and our governance framework, we have no mandate on this matter. We had 6 months to do that. So what was that complainant sitting at home thinking? There was an expectation, and we have failed to manage that expectation. So we need to be responsive. We need to have speed to address the issues. What is not within the jurisdiction, deal with it quickly and assist that person, whether you refer, as Niels has given us examples where he did, or whether you simply tell the person that I don't have jurisdiction, unfortunately. Secondly, I think another issue of why this challenging behavior, I think Niels, again, thank you for sharing this with us, the attitudes. Again, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, who's the cause of these attitudes? Before we blame the complainant, let's take stock again as the ombuds community and the ombuds world and say, when people think of us, what do they think? Do they think highly of us, or they just think that we are just another department that has failed them? So we need to really, I always say to my colleagues again, my desire is that this office, the City Ombudsman's Office, I look at it as a brand that I respect. I look at it exactly as that and understand that 4 million plus residents of Cape Town, when they think about this office, they must see us at work, city at work, office at work, and we cannot fail them. Otherwise, these attitudes, we will realize that we are the cause of these attitudes. So we must be really, respect the public and really serve them well. I always say again, when people walk into our space to come to us, they must come and live with an experience. And lastly, thank you, Niels, again, for sharing with us the study that complainants, when they come to us, sometimes they come with, their own predetermined outcome, whether they want revenge, retribution, or compensation. But if we fail to manage that expectation, again, we will deal with challenging behavior, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Now, lastly, I think my take again from Advocate van der Merwe is just two issues, colleagues, and then I proceed to the next speaker. How do we deal with this? Again, he's helping us this morning. He says he agrees with our previous speaker, that is Honorable Whittle, that each office must have a strategy in place to diffuse the challenging behavior. I think Niels endorses that as well, but Niels takes it further again and rather reminds us that we must not focus on the person, we must focus on the conduct. Hence, I suggest that we must take stock ourselves and get our ducks on the road. Ladies and gentlemen, our third speaker will be a video that will be played from the order of proceedings this morning. But allow me to quickly introduce the speaker, Ms. Deborah Glass from Australia, she's a Victorian ombudsperson. I will quickly tell you who she is. She was appointed to a 10-year term in March 2014. Her office looks at the Victorian government departments, local councils, statutory bodies, and contractors' decisions and actions. Deborah was raised in Melbourne and studied law at Monash University. She practiced law briefly before leaving Australia, working for an investment bank in Switzerland before moving into a career in financial services regulations in Hong Kong and London. She then moved into police oversight and became a commissioner of the Independent Police Complaints Commission of England and Wales. Ladies and gentlemen, Deborah was appointed in 2008 as the IPCC Deputy Chair, and in 2012 was awarded the OBE for her service. Deborah is on the board of the International Ombuds Institute, which connects more than 190 ombudsman's offices worldwide, and is also a member of the Australian and New Zealand Ombudsman Association. Deborah is committed to ensuring fair and reasonable decision-making and improving public administration. She holds a firm belief in public sector, integrity, and advancing human rights. Deborah is our third and final speaker, ladies and gentlemen. Frankie, would you play the video, or do we have a surprise? Is Deborah in the house?
Now we'll play the video.
Okay, let's go. Let's go. Thank you.
I'm joining you today from Melbourne, Australia, which is also known as NAM.
Can you hear the sound?
Yes, Frankie, loud and clear from my side.
Thank you.
you.
Yes, we can hear.
Hands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. It's an important Australian tradition to acknowledge our First Peoples and to acknowledge that this land has always been theirs. Ombudsmen around the world have a lot in common, whether it's the work we do or the challenges we face, like funding or getting governments to listen to us. But perhaps the most common problem we have is that of dealing with challenging behaviour of the people who use our services. And we know that people who handle complaints in government often say the hardest part of their job is handling the behaviour of some people who complain. Today I'm going to talk about some of the key things my office has learnt over the years in dealing with this. We've produced guides, and I was pleased to contribute to an IOI best practice paper on the subject. We also offer training that goes for 6.5 hours, so today I'm going to try to give you the highlights in less than 15 minutes. In summary, we recommend a graduated approach to dealing with challenging behaviour, from preventing, responding, to managing, and ultimately to limiting. These stages recognise complaint handlers encounter a spectrum of behaviour, from the slightly confronting to the clearly unreasonable, and that responses to such behaviour should be equally graduated. I'm going to talk about each step briefly, but first, a word on what we mean by challenging behaviour. Because dealing effectively with behaviour which challenges us starts with us. We need to understand our own triggers, and we are all different. We can all feel impatient or angry. So we need different techniques to deal with those circumstances when we are not at our best. By far the best way of dealing with challenging behaviour is to prevent it happening in the first place. There are some simple techniques for doing this, but basically it's all about good complaints handling. Let's start with welcoming complaints. If it's easy to complain, if people think you care about their feedback, that you want to know why they're not happy, and that you might actually do something about it, their unhappiness is much less likely to escalate into challenging behaviour. Then in dealing with the complaint, manage their expectations about the process and the outcome. If you say you're going to do something in a certain time frame, stick to it. If you can't, explain why not. Ask what outcome they are trying to achieve, and if it's not realistic, say so and why. Don't avoid difficult conversations. They will just get harder and harder the longer you leave them. I know you want me to fire the head of the agency, but this process is just not going to deliver that outcome. And talk like a human being, not a bureaucrat, and avoid jargon or legalese. For example, instead of, "This is in our policy in accordance with section blah blah of our legislation," you could say, "Well, we ask people to do X because it helps. Why?" By following these core principles of good complaints handling, it's amazing how many complaints simply don't turn into challenging behaviour. But if you can't prevent it, if a person's behaviour begins to escalate or they come to us in an already heightened emotional state, you need to respond to that behaviour to prevent it escalating further. What can we do? First, be aware of communication needs. There are many reasons people communicate in challenging ways. The person may have a disability or other vulnerabilities. The best way to find out is to ask, "How can I best communicate with you?" It's all about speaking to people in a way they will understand. Meeting people's communication needs wherever possible shows respect and avoids frustrating them unnecessarily. But what if a person is shouting at us? This can get in the way of working through the problem. We need to help them defuse their emotions and become calmer. For example, if you just hang up the telephone when a person starts shouting, the caller is likely to get angrier and try to escalate a complaint. We recommend the CARP strategy: control, acknowledge, refocus, problem solve. Control ourselves and our emotions. Don't be drawn into arguments. If someone is shouting at you, stay calm and don't shout back. Sometimes people just need to yell. It's not personal. It can be useful to stay quiet while someone is shouting. Eventually they'll stop to see if you're still there. And at that point, you acknowledge. Show that you have heard about their experience or their feelings or the impact of the issue on them. Reflect their language back to them to indicate they have been heard. So, "I can hear you're really upset about that." And then refocus. Help shift the person from a feeling state to a thinking state. Ask fact-based questions and remind them of the purpose of your conversation to try to resolve the problem. So what is it you want to happen? How can I help you? And finally, problem solve. Talk about the next steps required for resolution. Active listening is an important component of this strategy. Here are some handy tips for dealing with people who are angry or upset to help move the conversation forward. Drawing the person's attention to how long they have been talking. For example, I've been listening to you for 20 minutes and it sounds like a lot has happened. I need to ask some questions now so I can work out if I can help you. Repeating a simple, helpful message until the person hears you. For example, okay, let me explain what we can do. Make another time to talk. For example, I can hear you're upset at the moment. I can make a time to call you tomorrow to talk about your complaint. What time would suit you? Or use a firm voice. Mr. Potter, I'm trying to help you and you're yelling at me. We can talk about your complaint or we can leave it here. Which would you prefer? If none of those work, you may need to manage behaviour that becomes unreasonable. We define unreasonable behaviour as behaviour that gets in the way of us doing our job. There are many ways behaviour can be unreasonable, and each requires a different strategy. For relentless, persistent behaviour, for example, hundreds of emails or phone calls a day, you say no and repeat as often as necessary. You set time limits for conversations, respond just once a day or week to voluminous emails, and make clear you don't accept new complaints about the same issue if not supported by real new information. For unreasonable demands, for example, I expect you to respond today to every one of my emails. You set limits and you manage expectations about your process. For example, explain that you are not going to meet their demands and why. A simple way to help people understand is to explain, you own the complaint, but we own the process. For unreasonable arguments, politely decline or discontinue involvement. For complaints where there is no practical outcome or purpose, or if it becomes clear that the issue is groundless. Keep responses firm and as brief as possible. For unreasonable conduct such as abuse, aggression, threats and the like, set limits and conditions. Make clear the conduct is not acceptable. Unless safety is at risk, a person should be given a warning and an opportunity to change. So name the behaviour and why it's a problem. For example, Mr. Jones, you've been calling me every day about your complaint. I know you want this fixed, but I can't find out what happened if I spend all my time on the telephone. Explain the consequences if the person doesn't stop. Mr. Jones, you're yelling at me. I can't speak to you like this. Please lower your voice or I will need to end this call. If there is no change, back up your words with action. Stay polite and respectful. Mr. Jones, I'm going to end this call now. You're welcome to call back another day. Goodbye. Finally, be sure to document the unreasonable behaviour in your records and how the person responded. This will help others in your organisation and support any decision you may need to take to limit access. And finally, as a last resort, limit access. Most people who work in complaint handling have come across people whose sense of grievance is so deep, whose behaviour is so entrenched that nothing you do seems to make a difference. This means there may be times when nothing you try works and you need to limit a person's access to your services in order to protect staff and resources. You can consider limiting who the person can contact. It can be helpful to make sure only one person who's familiar with the issues deals with that person, or what issues you will respond to. For example, making clear you will not respond to matters already dealt with. When the person can contact you, for example, one call every Friday. Or how the person can contact you, for example, only in writing or through a representative. When you limit access, make sure the decision is made by an appropriately senior person, is documented with rationale and subject to regular review. The person must be informed of the limits and how they can continue to access services. You still need to assess complaints from the person even after limiting access to your service. There can still be a legitimate grievance at the heart of these complaints, but if there's nothing new, you don't need to spend time on responding. Finally, let me tell you about one of my most challenging complainants. Relentless, persistent, unreasonable, and abusive. She's actually been complaining about the Ombudsman since the 1970s. When I tried to work out what they were about, the complaints themselves simply merged into a giant dissatisfaction with the Ombudsman. I tried all these techniques when I became Ombudsman, then she began stalking me when I made speeches and on social media. We haven't responded to her for years now, and she's finally gone quiet. But I am quite sure, unless old age eventually carries her off, she will present the next Ombudsman with yet more challenging behaviour. I wish her or him good luck. That's a very quick overview to a very big topic, but I hope it gives you something to think about and some tips and techniques on an issue that affects us all. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Frankie, for assisting us and put the video on our screens. We appreciate that. I was skeptical about the video, but I must say it was very good. It was very good. I wouldn't really say much except to say it reinforces what the two earlier speakers have said, Advocate Niels van der Merwe and Honorable Whittle, that we need to have a strategy in dealing with this unchallenging behavior. And what really stood out on this video, colleagues, is that we need training. I think what Honorable Glasses indicated, Deborah Glasses, we need to understand communications. We need to be trained in communications. People, when they come to us, how to deal when somebody is shouting at you, and how to deal with, how to stay calm when you are questions of emotional intelligence that we are challenged to really be empowered and be capacitated. Because again, she emphasizes again what has been raised by the CCs, two earlier speakers. People come to us sometimes, or if not at most times, at a time with they're going through heightened emotions because they feel that the system has failed them. Relating to our Q&A session, we've got 20 minutes. So what I will do, I will invite the two speakers to respond to the questions. What we have done from where I'm sitting, most of the stuff that came in the chat box really, it's in the main comments, and I've seen that the panelists have responded to those comments, so everyone has got access. But because we are managing time, what questions or comments we cannot deal with, I know Frankie, as a rule, he will post those and give us a link and access to those. So nothing will be lost for today, but let's work on what we have for the next 20 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Here is the first question. This question, I think I'll give 2 minutes to both panelist members. So I'll give you 2 minutes to respond, Mr. Whittle, and then give Niels another 2 minutes to respond. Someone has posted this question: what are the key components or strategies that may be used to deal with difficult complainants? I'll say it slowly again. What are the key components or strategies that may be used to deal with difficult complainants? I think you guys have covered this, but however, it is a question. Maybe you want to look back and say and respond to that. Who's ready to start, Niels or Mr. Whittle? Mr. Whittle, let's start with you. Did you get the questions there?
Thank you, Vusi. I think The video really sets it out very well. Strategy is prevent, respond, manage, or limit. That is if you cannot. And I think Honorable Van der Merwe equally set out the type of attitudes that and how we will respond to them. So for me, the strategies are clear, but I think it is better that we put those tips into a policy framework to assist our, complaint handlers and investigators as to how, when they are confronted with a situation, how they can naturally respond. The strategy is not in the list of how it is set out somewhere, but how we imbibe it, how we train our staff, and how we enable them to react whenever such challenging behavior is manifested. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Whittal. Niels, you want to come in? 2 minutes response.
Yes, thank you again. Yes, I totally agree with Honorable Whittal. I think the only thing I want to add is two things. The understanding beforehand, because people who come to the Ombudsman offices and seek their services treat us, or sometimes treat us in a way that they won't treat the service providers if they were to source those services, if they were to go to an attorney or a lawyer and pay them for something, then they wouldn't react in that way. And somehow we need to understand, why is it that because the service is mostly free of charge, there's a higher expectation on the level of tolerance from the Ombudsman office. And I think, again, it's in like Honorable Glass and Whittal has been saying, how we manage that. But there's also, I think the other important aspect of the strategy is the impact. We all, when we sign up and when we become members of an Ombudsman office, knows it's more than just a job, it's a calling. And we are prepared to go the extra mile, and we are expected to deal with people who find it difficult to get relief elsewhere. And I think it's that in itself, the fact that we are prepared to go that way is not always reflective of the fact that it goes with a lot of sacrifice from staff members. And the one thing that gets by the way is the impact. And I think the policy is important not only to deal with that, but also to manage, because it leads to exhaustion, it leads to stress. We've all experienced those incidents that, and as Honorable Glass was saying, person stalking, and that's to get back to the interests of staff members as well. It's not only to deal with resources, but we are dealing with humans from both sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels, and thank you, Honorable Whittal. I think, gentlemen, you are really helping us with those thoughts and input. But let me rush to the second question, again, in the interest of time. The question is, I'm interested in how we can reframe challenging behavior with a trauma-informed lens. I'm interested in how we can reframe challenging behavior with a trauma-informed lens. It's not my question, gentlemen. It's a question from a colleague. I'm not sure I understand it, but you are the experts of the day. Is there anyone who wants to come in and respond? I see Honorable Whittal seems to be ready. You want to come in, sir?
Well, it's interesting the angle from which the questioner is coming. Rephrasing in the context of trauma-induced behavior, right? Is that it?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I mean, definitely, if the person, in my presentation, I indicated that one of the considerations for unreasonable behavior is the health of the person, the health of the complainant and or the complaint situation. If the person is suffering from a trauma, he hasn't indicated what type of trauma, but from the behavior, it is clear that there are health implications involved in the question or in the complaint or the behavior. It is necessary for the complaint handler to put on the lens of, is this a behavior that I can handle as a professional? If it is beyond my professional competence, we need to refer to another institution. But of course, within the institution, there would be, you can escalate it up to the management level, and that decision can be taken. Because trauma-induced behavior is a health situation, and you may not be able to resolve that problem by yourself.
Honorable Whittle, Niels, you want to come in, please? Thank you.
Yes, I totally agree with Honorable Whittle. The biggest mistake we can make is to try and psychoanalyze a behavior in that, because we are not the professionals. I try to read up about paranoid and schizophrenic behavior, because for me it was, when can one expect to be able to deal rationally with the person? When will the person respond in a way that he or she, because it won't help to try and manage it if there's no understanding on the side of the person of what you're trying to achieve. And it's informed by either conditions of trauma or underlying disorders or something that's not responsive to rational explanations. And I dismally failed when I tried to think of it, because I'm not a professional. I remember trying to involve family members, and we are just not professionals. So I agree, there's a point in understanding when it's got a medical or an influence on the person. And that's why I think training and also perhaps partnerships with health professional institutions, because to get those people through systems where they can get medical assistance, any other organization will experience the same behavioral problem. So if we don't facilitate the access to that, understanding it from our perspective, we might just pass the problem on to someone else. So I think it's important to have partnerships as well.
Thank you very much, both of you colleagues. I think what really stands out, as I was thinking when Honorable Whittle and yourself was talking about the issue of trauma and how we should understand it, I was thinking right where I am at now in South Africa. It is we are still a traumatized nation given our past, our recent past. Remember now, when people come to us, they've got an expectation of the promise of democracy. So it goes back to what I suppose what Niels you said, that this should be a calling, and understand our difficulty. And I'm making an example in South Africa. If wheels are falling off now 20 years post-democracy, do you blame people when they come to you mad, demanding service delivery? How do you deal with that trauma? So it goes back now to us, those who are as heads of these institutions or have influence in the positions we are privileged to occupy, to really put systems in place. And what I think stands out is that each office must try to have a training, maybe get a communication experts to come and do training periodically to help us understand how to deal with challenging behavior, how to see it coming, how to prevent it, and so on and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a few questions coming up again. Here is another question. Would the panel recommend greater use of mediation to deal with challenging behavior? Or how, I think we've exhausted this one. Let's focus maybe on this part of this question. How will the panel recommend dealing with complainants who threaten suicide? Again, I'm worried we are not psychiatrists, and but again, I'm sure someone is speaking from experience of dealing with someone who had a serious trauma and perceived him or her as threatening suicide. But gentlemen, you are the experts. Any comments? Again, 2 minutes for yourself, Mr. Whittle, and 2 minutes for Niels, quickly.
Right, thank you, Vusi. Now, just like we indicated in the earlier question on trauma, suicide is equally a health issue. And Van der Merwe indicated that it's important for us to build partnerships. Now, if a complainant walks in and in the course of the complaint, there's a threat of suicide, which you by yourself, by our training, cannot resolve. It's important that we should know how we involve the authorities who will be able to speak to this complainant to de-escalate the situation from suicide to the possibility of how the complaint can then be dealt with. But if the person is threatening suicide and you take it and you want to manage it as an ombudsman, you would be attempting something that is beyond your scope. I would advise that we should refer to the appropriate authorities, mental health authority, or any other similar body, and make sure that we follow up to see how it's being handled.
Thank you, Mr. I appreciate that. Any thoughts from your side, Niels?
Yeah, yes, I think Honourable Whittle is spot on. It's not within our scope. I think, again, what's within our scope is our responses, because you don't want to aggravate. It doesn't help if you say to the person, then go, because we know that that threat is a cry for help. So what I would add to that is, in addition to the partnerships, is also the issue of training internally, how to respond, because it's also traumatic for the investigator or the complaint handler to be faced with such a situation where you know the manner in which you respond can have a profound impact on someone. You don't know whether you need to take it seriously or not seriously. We need to have backups for that kind of approach, and again, training to know, don't try and diffuse it yourself, but to refer it, keep the person on the line, or because there are a number of helplines in that regard. And I think we, for instance, even after so many years, could benefit, because we've had it. I've had once or twice a situation like that, which we managed. But still, after 25, 26 years, we haven't constructively dealt with it in our office. So I think we will certainly take heed of the advice here today as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How much time do we have left? Okay, we still have 6 minutes to go, gentlemen. Please stay with me. Here is another question. Last year, we published our revised approach to dealing with problem behavior, and we've been encouraging organizations to adopt a similar approach. Aligning with the available research on managing difficult communication and our key value of being people-centered. This topic remains one of the common areas of interest, and I'm really interested to hear what is happening in others who are dealing with this matter. All right, this is just a comment from the Scottish Public Service Ombudsman. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is there any other one we can post? Okay, I'm sorry about that. Now, I just want to say, before we go to your final thoughts now, as we are going to conclude, to me, from your keynote address on these issues and your presentations on these issues to us, this matter, in my view, is a matter that must be urgently dealt with. like I said, our experiences in South Africa, I'm sure Niels, you'll agree, there are challenges in South Africa. I am not sure about other parts of the world, where the promise of democracy is becoming a deferred dream. So we are likely and we continuously getting under pressure as the ombuds, because for the reasons and good intents and purposes of services being free, so people can access us, but they come to us as the office of the last resort. They are frustrated. So I think this webinar challenges us to really say, how do we intervene, put these strategies in place, these trainings in place to empower our staff and ourselves to adequately deal with this challenge, as Niels has said, which I fully agree. This work, we have embraced it half of our lives, or if not most of our lives, serving our own people, but we will not shy away from the problems that we are dealing with. Now, it appears that there are no further questions or comment. Let me just scroll, or there is just one. How do you deal with a complainant who represents, or who presents rather, a different expectation at the end of the investigation, when we have dealt with the investigation and addressed the expectations presented to you initially? So I guess someone is asking if you guys can quickly give him or her some heads up on how to deal with that. You've told her your mandate and the expected outcomes, but suddenly he changes, he says, I want this, I want that. How do you deal with that? Any quick comments? 1 minute for you, Mr. Whittle, and 1 minute for you. Wrap up.
I think I addressed it in my unreasonable complaint, behavior. If you have completed the investigation, comprehensively written a report or a decision, and to the institution within the law, you have completed everything. Now, complainant comes back and says, no, I don't think you have been fair to me. I think the outcomes should be different. Now, that is unreasonable. We have a scope within which we also operate. We cannot operate as if our mandate is inelastic. Inelastic. It's important that we solve the problem by letting him know this is our position, take it or leave it. These are the outcomes based on your complaint, and that is where we draw the line. It's important that we bring the curtain to an end at a certain stage.
Thank you. Niels, any quick comments? If any?
Yes, again, it comes down to two types of responses. People who are unreasonably persistent but rational in their approach. They will add information and add and argue in a rational way, and they just unable to accept the outcome. The approach is to have a cutoff point, communicate clearly, ensure that processes have been followed, because we can have different. The only challenging issue is where we know the outcome is not based on a good process. We have an option of a review, an internal review, if it's not a final decision once, and thereafter you need to make a call and say, we're not going to entertain. We have the same experience as Honorable Glass was saying. Every 7 years, a new public protector comes, a new person would raise the same issue that has already been concluded with the previous public protector, and we need to know that it's final. Then if it's not a reasonable persistence, but just a person who's unable to understand the process, then we need to fall back on our training and issues that the conduct failure, issues that we've dealt with here. That would be my approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A big round of applause to our panel of experts this morning. This has been very informative. Thank you, gentlemen. I know I'm speaking on behalf of many who have logged in across the world, and you've been very phenomenal. I think now it's only fair, in the interest of time, just challenge you. Maybe you can wrap up if there are any final thoughts from you, Niels, and you, Mr. Wheaton. Then I can hand over for closure to the chairperson, to the next speaker. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? Inputs,
yes,
maybe?
a thought or two.
Yeah.
Picking from where Mercy left off, and what you also indicated, we are living in changed times. Economic crunches have brought within them more problems than we otherwise have had. And so people are more aggrieved, people expect more from the ombuds institutions, and we need to appreciate that there'll be more challenging misbehavior. Again, democracy seems to be failing in this part of the world. Coup d'etats and everything. There's a lot of disenchantment. All this would provide some complaints, grievances that would definitely fall on the lap of the ombudsman. So the expectations on the ombudsman are now even higher than we think. So, one, training, capacity building of our staff. If we never did that, we need to really equip them to be ready to know how to manage, because some people need to vent. In a situation of hopelessness, economic problems, they still must vent. So how do we handle that? It's important that we equip our staff, train them to be able to know how to handle challenging behavior.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vital. Your final thoughts, Niels, 1 minute. Niels? You can't hear us.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, Niels. I can hear you now. You can come in.
Yes, my internet was unstable for a second. I think we need to understand what Honorable Whittle was saying is people who find it difficult to communicate are also a vulnerable part of the community and finding it difficult to manage their own emotions. And it's important for us because the most important aspect of an ombudsman office is to be the voice of those who cannot communicate themselves and to ensure that we are accessible, because that is our role in strengthening, in South Africa at least, constitutional democracy. Because once people have lost faith in the constitutional and democratic institutions, that's when they opt out and try and find a voice elsewhere. And this is also a vulnerable part of our stakeholders. So it is a difficult part of it, but I think we are all committed to be accessible to all people, irrespective of the challenge and the burden that it puts on us. And I think it's important to look at the tools that we have discussed today, because that is our empowerment lies, and also the partnerships, what we've shared today here, and knowing that other ombudsman offices are going through the same type, when we are not alone, that's a big plus for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you. I'm wrapping up now. There are no further questions, further comments. I just want to say, it's clear that, as both of you have indicated, that we must foresee more complaints coming to our institutions, because democracy is really failing our people. So, but striking a balance, whilst the office is getting more complaints, we must not be open to abuse of process. We must strike that balance. That's how I see it. But training becomes important to help us deal with those issues where we need to balance. So thank you for everyone who has logged in, but we will now close, but I'm going to hand back to Madeleine Nirere, Honorable Madeleine Nirere, for a vote of thanks, and then we adjourn the proceedings.
No, to Marian. Marian, please give a vote of thanks.
Okay.
Honorable Nirere was not able to join us.
Thank you, Frankie. My bad. I didn't get the update to that effect. Over to you, ma'am. We are ready for you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Facilitator. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to be given the privilege of thanking you all, especially the dignitaries and participants, for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this webinar. On behalf of the African Ombudsman Research Center, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to all esteemed panelists of the webinar for their presence and contribution to making this webinar a great success. It is so important to share experiences from other ombudsmen, as especially with national ombudsmen, you have no peers in your own countries. Thank you to Professor Brian MacArthur, who conducted the welcome address on behalf of UKZN, Honorable Mercy Wambua, who welcomed everybody on behalf of AOMA, Honorable Usumzi Magwebo, who did a sterling job facilitating the proceedings, Honorable Joseph Whittle, who discussed what is challenging behaviour, Advocate Niels van der Merwe, who discussed how to productively deal with challenging behaviour, and Mrs. Deborah Glass, who delivered a pre-recorded presentation in which she provided guidance to Ombudsman officers on how to effectively deal with challenging behaviours. And last but not least, thank you to all participants. To the presenters, I speak on behalf of the participants when I say that your insights and informative presentations are truly appreciated. Thank you for the valuable insights which help improve their work as public servants. Thank you for agreeing to present. I would also like to thank the interpreters for always providing such good service to AORC. Thank you also to the organizing team, especially Mrs. Hazel Langer from the UKZN Corporate Relations Office, who is always ready to assist in any way that she can. Please take note that AORC will be introducing 2 new features to the AOMA-AORC website, namely upcoming webinars and vlogs. For the upcoming webinars, you will be able to register in advance. We will try to feature at least the next 4 webinars. You can click on the upcoming webinars tab on the AOMA-AORC website and select the webinar you would like to attend. You click on the link and register. The upcoming webinars are in December the 1st, we're going to be dealing with showcasing sectoral ombudsman, children's health and banking ombudsman. January the 17th, mediation, alternative dispute resolution. February the 14th, customer service skills, consistently delivering outstanding customer services and managing customer service expectations. On March the 21st, research skills, especially web-based research skills. Vlogs will feature 5 to 15-minute videos discussing different issues affecting ombudsmen. Thank you everyone once again for making this webinar a great success. Have a fantastic day further.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Much
Thank you.
appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marion.
See you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Darren, today.